This is Amateur Faith Night, a podcast where real-life friends talk about real-life religion, where questions are encouraged, doubt is talked about, and following Jesus is our main priority. Let this be a starting place for you to research things and study them out for yourself. God is bigger than all of our questions, and it is okay to not have all of the answers.
So we gotta go like this when we say something?
I know, that's what I'm saying. Do you
come
want
on
us
in,
to
Cal.
share?
No, that's okay.
Let's talk together. How are you? Come on.
Stupid.
This is your idea.
Okay.
Tonight's episode brought to you by Hard Drive Backups.
You're right, Jen. It was a lot better with you and I.
I know.
Well, here we are in the flesh. It's
Okay,
the happiest days of our lives.
Are we starting? Because you're
Yes.
not talking in a mic at all. You're just like talking.
I was actually just naming off Pink Floyd songs.
Oh, I was wondering what you were saying.
Those are titles of songs.
Jen, how are you doing today?
So we're starting officially.
She's
Okay.
back from her drunken bender.
Yeah, that's true.
No, we said we weren't going to talk about that.
Oh.
Yeah. Let's be nice.
Kelly said we have to be nice.
So
Good, I'm
Jennifer
glad.
was not on a drunken bender. She was working with some nuns in South America, healing the lepers.
Again, talk in your mic. Okay, listen. I don't drink on drunken benders. Let's just throw that out there right now. We're not talking about that person. Apparently,
Is this how we usually
Kelly
start?
said-
Isn't there like a hello, thanks for joining us?
No,
no, we're just starting.
this is a
Is this how we start?
Jeremy and Gary. You're gonna.
See, and Gary's not talking to his
Gary,
mic.
Gary.
I knew
Okay,
this was
sorry.
I feel like
Here we go.
doing a duet.
I believe the children are our future. Teach them well, and
Let them lead the way.
You need some like lounge music.
show them all the beauty.
You should not have started Whitney.
You shouldn't have put us together.
Okay. All right.
Are you?
Just don't put. Okay.
I offered to give you my mic. Like, I don't mind.
It's okay.
Okay.
Is that really what you have to do? Okay.
It is helpful for me when I'm editing if everyone is really close to their mics.
Okay.
Yes, but I know this is awkward and like you guys are like all up on each other right now. So I'm sorry.
Hypothetically, if you guys had recorded an episode earlier that didn't take, are we doing that over again right now?
Hypothetically speaking, if Kelly and I did a really good job recording an hour and 15-minute long episode and we were redoing it because my computer wasn't recording for some reason, we're doing it on Modesty. And originally you weren't invited.
Why did we add them?
Okay, listen.
This may be another episode that doesn't make it to
This-
air.
I don't know. I'm all paranoid now. Because now I just want to touch my computer and it's too far away and I have no idea. But the green light is on. But the green light was on earlier. So I don't know. But apparently I'm really computer stupid because this is the second episode I've lost in the last 6 months. And I don't know how I'm employed, honestly, with computers. And I feel like, hold on, I feel like I have to check. Did we turn
I'll
everything
check.
on?
We haven't started yet anyway.
Okay. We always started. Oh yeah,
Yeah, we're
that's
way
definitely
Yeah,
counting.
so
Okay.
Yeah, time's going there. You got the whole thing.
So Kelly and I recorded this really informative episode about modesty.
Huge.
It's going to be huge.
And my computer little green recording light was on and I pressed record. I thought I did. I'm pretty sure I did. And then I got up and I looked at it when we were finished and it said recording stopped. So I don't know what happened and I'm very frustrated and I kind of wanted to cry. But Jeremy and Gary were upstairs, so we invited them for comedic relief.
We want to thank Susan for sponsoring this episode and her clothing line of pantaloons for those that need to go swimming in mixed bathing situations.
What? Okay.
The modest pantaloons.
So I don't even know. I don't even know if I can wrap my brain around what I need to say at this point anymore. I was pointing out a comment that was Jeremy was referring to, but Kelly said that was kind of mean. So
Kelly has a much more kinder heart than most
She does. We even ended our episode in prayer and everything. Like, she did good.
It's probably what shut the computer down. So I'm used to hearing it.
Yeah, because that's never been done.
Okay. So, anyways, and your phone's on top of mine, but I think I did that. I almost blamed you. I'm sorry. So yeah, Jeremy was referring to a comment that was on my Facebook page that was very degrading toward me, which is fine because I thought it was hilarious and I was going to mention it, but Kelly said we were being mean. So
I didn't say we were being mean.
yes, you did.
I said no.
What's the comment? I'll read
I
it.
said let's just focus.
Yeah, you didn't mention
on,
it. I did. So what's the comment?
Yeah, let's focus just on what the topic that we want to address,
Modesty.
which is modesty.
Which the comment did have something to do with modesty and my lack thereof.
It's probably best if we just read the comment.
Gary, Kelly's like, no.
No, we don't need to. You don't need to rehash negativity
Who invited
that are coming.
I know.
That's
So I was like,
coming
fine.
from a place of just
love?
No, I mean
So
misunderstanding.
Okay, Kelly's being very nice. This not very nice person to put something on my Facebook, my public page, not like my private page or anything. I have no idea who this person is. But I think they wanted it to be public because they put it on a public page. But we won't rehash it. But it basically was bashing my clothing choices and how they were inappropriate for humans in general, not just.
How does this person know what you wear?
That's a very good question, Gare. I guess she stalked my Facebook page. I have no idea. And I don't even know because it's not like I posted like pictures of myself really on my public page. So, but that kind of spurred like the whole thing because we were talking about modesty in this episode, and it's was the common misunderstanding, I feel like, of why my clothing choices are inappropriate for people in general. I don't think I dress like a hussy or anything, so like I feel like I dress pretty modestly. So yeah.
So that raises the question: what is modesty?
Enjoy
There
the
you go.
slideshow of Jen's clothes.
No. So at this point in the podcast, I was asking Kelly what her thoughts on modesty actually were because she was not raised with any crazy viewpoints on modesty. And so, like, what is your normal viewpoint?
I forgot what I said, but I think
It was really good, though. What you said before was really good.
yeah, I think I said, well, with modesty, I think like it's one of those things. I hope I'm not taking some of your answers now.
No, take
But,
it. Do it. Say whatever you
I
want. It
think
doesn't
it is-
matter at this point. No one else besides the two of us heard the whole conversation we just had.
I do think about like the way you dress as being modest and not. I guess being modest would mean as like in general is just like a kind of a general definition of just not over sexualized, I guess. As modest, if you're wearing clothing, is the way I would look at it.
So, modesty refers to clothing in general and over sexualizing yourself.
I guess it can, yeah. Is that what you guys think?
See, this has nothing to do with guys.
Yeah.
Modest is the hottest.
Well, that's what we were taught. Literally, though.
I like
It's so
that.
hot. It's so hot to wear modest clothes in the summer in Missouri when it's like 105 degrees outside.
I know, and I do think my definition of modesty is different because I would not say modest is like long sleeves and pants all the time, like that's over the top. Like I would say modest is just not looking just majorly risque, like and I sound really old when I just said that.
Risque.
But not too like like I said before, like wearing a bikini at at the mall or something.
You go to the mall in a bikini, that is not modest. Yes. So the question comes up because, like, those of us who were raised Pentecostal, holiness, we were always taught, like, the rules were laid out. So, like sleeves had to be to your elbows in most situations. Sometimes cap sleeves were okay. Like in one church we went to, they were. In the other church, not so much. Or like skirts have to be to your knees, or your dresses have to be to your knees, and it has to be specifically like like we always had to actually, which I didn't bring this up before, but when we were at like camps and stuff, we had to kneel on the floor. And if the skirt touched the floor, then it was okay. If it was above the floor, then we had to go change. But clothes obviously couldn't be too tight, although I don't feel like they really, I don't think they measure that in any specific way. But like
I don't know how you would.
but well, because if you bend over and your underwear line shows. I did know somebody
You
that
can
had to
use
go
one
change.
of those like body fat calipers that has the little thing, little pinchers.
Oh.
If it's too tight.
It's true.
Yeah.
We had to use
Can
3
I bounce
fingers.
a quarter off of her butt?
See, I don't know why we brought them
I
down
think
here.
that has to do with firmness.
Honk.
Anyways, we were taught specific rules. We actually had a safety pen drawer too in the bathroom at our church.
Was that to make adjustments to your clothing?
Yep. And we had one particular lady that would drag us to the bathroom if she thought that our slit was too high in our skirt. So like your slit couldn't be above your knee either. Like so if your slit was above your knee, you had to pin it.
So
or
many
your
rules.
shirt was too low, you had to pin it together.
What were some of the rules for the boys?
That's a very good question, Gary. None. No, not really. It just depends on the church. Jeremy always gripes and complains because he had to wear pants to gym class.
Were those pantaloons?
They were pantaloons.
Yeah.
You can sit closer to me. It's okay. You can.
No.
All we're doing is just sitting over. I'm not really
You're
getting any closer.
There you go.
Bumping the
Okay.
table.
Anyways, so I think whenever we come out of that mindset, like where everything is like so laid out for us, it's very difficult to figure out like what exactly modesty is and what it means and if what we're wearing is modest or not. So that was the whole point of this episode. That was the whole point of talking about it in general, because it's like, I don't know. I was so worried about like making the guys lust and stumbling and whatever because I had pants on or because I was wearing shorts. Yeah.
So how do you figure out the guidelines after leaving when someone's telling you the rules, I guess, right?
Right. And Kelly made a good assumption in the last episode that we didn't record.
What was that assumption?
Is there still some
I didn't.
upsetness?
I
about
know,
that?
I'm so mad.
The last episode.
Last episode,
What was your assumption, Kelly?
what were you saying about that?
Never
Like,
mind.
Maybe you
It
should
was-
listen to the Spirit or something, like, you know.
Oh,
how
yeah.
God gives us.
That's what we were saying.
That
Yes, that if you don't have exactly. I was saying that, yeah, you know what's appropriate. You know, by when you're wearing it, you know what's not appropriate in certain situations. It's not like there's a rule book that tells you that, but you know, God gives you discernment.
in certain situations.
Right.
Like what's modest in one situation might not be modest in the other.
Mm-hmm.
Like a living room, Bible study.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You hit me.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, like...
Jeremy just
Bible
caught
study
on.
where
I gotta have a bruise on my leg. Kelly,
the one brown eye is staring at you eye level as you're sitting on the floor. You're like, holy shnikes, don't look over there.
Okay.
so that-
Anyway.
Jen's gonna pray that this episode gets lost. She's in deep prayer.
Okay, that may or may not have happened to somebody that we know.
May or may not have happened.
May or may not have. Yes, if you're showing your parts that should be your private areas.
Your important
Covered.
parts, I used to be told.
Yeah, your
Right.
important parts.
Yes, Kelly actually explained it very well too before, like how she teaches her elementary school kids.
No, I don't talk about important parts at school.
Okay,
My parents.
the parents.
My parents taught us, you know, nobody should touch or see your important parts. So that's how you should think when you dress, right? You shouldn't show off your stuff.
Go to Bible studies. Anyways, yes. 1 Timothy chapter 2 verse 9 and 1 Peter chapter 3 is where the modesty verses get pulled from. And it says, likewise, the women are to dress in suitable apparel with modesty and self-control. Their adornment must not be with braided hair or gold or pearls or expensive clothing, but with good deeds, as it is proper for women who profess reverence for God. So there's no rules of like modesty being a certain length of your skirt or a certain length of your sleeves or how low it is. Are you going there? Is that what you're doing?
I'm looking.
So my question was before, like, how did the UPC or Holiness churches like come up with skirts that have to be to your knee? Why was that a thing? And so I broached that question in our group that we're in, and the only verse that I could come up with that anybody could come up with was in Exodus. And it was in Exodus 28:42, I believe. Yep. In Exodus 28, when they're talking about this is what the priests would wear.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, you were to make pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet, and all around the hem, and bells of gold between them. The pattern needs to be a gold bell and a pomegranate, a gold bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe. It's just a bunch of rules, or not really rules, but like guidelines of what the priest should wear. And in the very end, it says, make for them linen undergarments to cover their naked bodies. They must cover them from the waist to the thigh. So that's the only thing that we could come up with that was the reasoning. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that's like more like, that would be like more supportive of leggings, not skirts to your knee. Because the whole point of this was to have undergarments in case the priest died and they can pull them out. Yeah. And then they didn't like shine everybody in Israel with all their goods.
Crotchal region.
Right. So wouldn't that be like more supportive?
The important parts.
Yeah, exactly. Or their private parts. Wouldn't that be more of like an argument to put pants on underneath your skirt than to wear a skirt to your knee?
No, I would think so. Because
modestly, like, the skirt is not that modest. You can't really, like, I mean, you have to watch how you sit. You can't climb stuff. You can't ride a horse modestly. You can't, like, go ziplining modestly. You can't, like...
Wouldn't be able to sky jump.
Climb a tree. Things like that.
Pogo stick.
Yeah.
Not going to do that.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. You can't stand above people on a platform without people being able to look at your skirt.
There are things you can do.
I need you to stop.
One thing that I noticed and I want to point out is in 1 Timothy 2, right before you read the verses you're reading, it's talking about men. He says, I desire therefore that men pray in every place, lifting up holy hands without wrath and disputing. Verse 9, he says, in like manner, that women adorn themselves in modest apparel. So he is talking, because he mentions the word apparel, but he's also talking, I think, more of like a mindset or attitude, because he likened it to what he just said about the men, without wrath, without disputing. You know, we're to be kind, we're to be gentle. I think with the women, he's saying in like manner, their clothing should not profess like their worth or their value.
Right. Well, and that makes sense because in 1 Peter chapter 3, he was talking about... Oh, you found it?
No, I was just telling him you could use mine.
Oh. In 1 Peter chapter 3, he talks about, in the same way for wives, first off, this is addressing wives, not all women, same as like the hair situation, to be subject to your own husbands. Then, if some are disobedient to the word, the men, they will be won over without a word by the way you live, when they see that you're pure and reverent conduct. Let your beauty not be external, like the braiding of hair and wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes, but the inner person of the heart, the lasting beauty of a gentle and tranquil spirit, which is precious in the sight of God. So in the same way, the holy women who hoped in God long ago adorned themselves by being subject to their husbands. So it's like, he's saying, you know, it's not about how you're dressing on the outside, but you can even win your husband over to God by just treating him right and being like in the right spirit, and not, it's not about how you're dressing on the outside. But I've heard these verses used of like why we can't wear jewelry, and that's not what it's saying at all, because jewelry actually is spoken about in a lot of positive ways in the Bible, more positive than it is negative for sure. So I think he's just saying, like, it's just about your heart. It's about how you portray yourself. But Kelly and I were talking earlier about modesty and how I think it's misconstrued of being like just about your clothing and all the clothing rules, when I think it has a lot to do with your intent of your heart as well. And I think like that Instagram page, Apostolic Runway, again, not me. I do not do this. I do not have anything to do with it, because usually if something is negative against UPC, I'm usually blamed around here. Just throwing that out there.
We actually don't know who runs that one.
No idea. But they make valid points. They just like basically just repost pictures that people have already posted of themselves of like these expensive, gaudy items of clothes. And like, how is that modest? And how are you? It's just hypocritical. It just seems hypocritical.
Doing it to get attention.
Right. And like, why is it okay for them to wear these big gaudy headbands or purses or heels and shoes that are super expensive, super gaudy, but we can't wear a necklace? Like, why? Is that any different?
So it's okay to have a $6,000 purse, but not an $80 necklace.
Right. Yeah. How is that modest? I don't. Are you still looking?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know the context?
No.
Okay. I'm trying.
No.
I want to know.
So do I.
Listen, if I am responsible for making a man lust,
You are.
I need to know.
It's all your fault.
Well, they've done studies. 60% of the time it works. 100% of the time.
Huh? What?
Women making a man lust.
I don't understand your math.
That's a quote from Maker Man.
Oh, God. See? Okay.
But what was your point behind that, Gary? Is that you're saying
Well,
that...
maybe, I want to say it was either
I think that you're maybe thinking about the UPC rules. We're saying more.
That you need to cover up because it's your fault if a man's tempted by you.
Yeah.
Like that's why that stuff was put in place. I thought there was like a source scripture about it, but I thought we had talked about that before, from the UPC.
Mm-hmm.
It was all the burden of the woman to make sure that you guys were all homely looking.
So, and I think you're talking about Romans 14:13.
I don't know.
Okay.
What's that say?
Let me look it up. Therefore, we must not pass judgment on one another, but rather determine never to place an obstacle or a trap before a brother or sister.
I mean,
That could be very...
Some interpretations would probably say stumbling block.
I think that's the KJV. It says,
It could be anything.
Yeah. Let us therefore not judge one another anymore, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way.
so I'm gonna start calling Kelly stumbling block.
But the problem when you insert that into modesty is that, like, I can't control other people. I can't control other people's thoughts of me.
Right.
So...
Yeah. I mean, it's just an unfortunate, state that our society is in, that women are over-sexualized, and I think men, sometimes watch things that are inappropriate and get into porn, and those sins lead to sins that lead to possibly, violating a woman or lusting after a woman that has nothing to do with you or where you're at. It just has to do with the fact that they have, fallen into sin.
Right.
Right?
And I think it has everything to do with the man's fault and how we teach our boys. I think that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
To not sexualize women.
Yeah. Right.
But that's what we were talking about earlier, the whole display of what were you wearing. You don't know what that is? So it's a display that they take around to different exhibits, basically, and it's clothing items that people were wearing while they were sexually assaulted. So a lot of it is Amish dresses and, pantsuits or things like that. And where somebody is like, well, what were you wearing to provoke that behavior? But like, it doesn't matter. And like, I was catcalled in Lowe's parking lot one time wearing scrubs. So it goes to show you, like, I couldn't know what someone else was thinking if I tried. Like, I have no idea. And obviously I wasn't trying to be over sexual, and I was completely modest in what I was wearing that day, but it didn't matter. Like, if somebody's heart is in the wrong place, you can't.
No. And you can't be
change that.
blamed for someone else's sin. And like I was saying before, I think too, like, we were all born naked, like Adam and Eve were naked in the garden. What's the thing that made it not right? What's the thing that made it all of a sudden weird? Was when sin came into the world. So it's like the same thing here, right? It's the sin that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So just like hater's going to hate, luster's going to lust.
I mean, it's true. It's true. And it's exhausting trying to, like,
Swifty.
It's exhausting trying to keep hold of you guys when I can't control it, but it's hard to try. Mm-hmm. It's like when you're constantly worried. So, like, we went on vacation. I've told this story like 100 times. I told it in my book too. But like, when we went on vacation after we got out of the UPC, I asked you, I was like, it's just you and I. And we're going to go to the pool, right? So swimming suits in general were like kind of a new thing. So I was like, what do you want me to wear? And you're like, I wanted you to wear a red bikini. And I was like, what? No, I'm not wearing that. Like, and my hang up wasn't me. It was, what if somebody saw me in that and lusted, or somebody I knew saw me and lusted, and would I be responsible for them going to hell because they were sinning? I was putting all of that onto me, when in reality, like, I ended up buying something that was modest, like it was covering, but it wasn't modest by any standards that we used to have. And I felt comfortable, and you were fine. And I didn't care about anybody else, because, like, somebody that I worked with, I was telling them, I don't know what to buy. Jeremy wants me to buy this, and I don't know what to do. And she's like, why? It's just a swimsuit. Who cares? Just buy it. Like, she was so nonchalant about it. It kind of brought me back to, yeah.
That's how easy it is.
It's so easy. Like, I can't control anyone else. Mm-hmm. So, like, I just wanted you to be happy. Like, and I was completely comfortable in it. And it didn't make me feel weird when I did it, after I got over that hurdle. But the point of it is, like, it was modest where we were. We were at a pool. Everyone else was wearing swimming clothes. Like, it was completely fine. No, I wasn't standing out. And even if somebody was lusting after me, that's not my job to fix it. It's not my job to monitor them. Mm-hmm. So I was also talking earlier about the post that Sharon McKee made a couple years ago when she was on the Apostolic cruise. Did you know that was a thing?
There's an Apostolic cruise?
There is. Mm-hmm. They do it every year.
Is the pool all holy water?
That's Catholics.
Oh, I was checking.
But like, can you even imagine being on that with everybody like fully clothed? Like,
I wonder if they buy out the whole ship, or if there's other people on there.
I hope they buy out the whole ship, because it would be so weird. Like, I would be very sad if I accidentally booked that, and that was my entertainment and everything.
I don't know.
They have to book out the whole ship. But anyway,
I bet Susan sells a lot of pantaloons for that.
Okay, Sharon McKee was on this cruise, and she made a Facebook post talking about how everyone was looking at her. She was laying out on the beach in her modest leggings with a skirt and like rash guard shirt on, and she was noticing that as people were walking by in their swimsuits, they were looking at her. And she was proud about it. So she posted on Facebook this big old long thing about how proud that she was so modest that people were looking at her in her swimming wear.
It's a very modest approach.
Right? So that's the whole idea. Like, but is it modest really? If that's why you're doing it and you're okay with people staring at you and you're like, oh yeah, look at me be modest. How is that modest?
Well, at the very least, it's a pride issue.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which isn't modesty at all. And I think that's where it goes back to what that verse in 1 Peter was saying. Like, it's all about what's in your heart and how you're a good person, basically. And for 1 Timothy says it too, and good works. So it doesn't matter what you're wearing. It matters, like, where your heart's at And as long as you're not trying to be provocative and trying to get people to look at you, and as long as what you're wearing fits into the situation that you're in, I think you're completely modest. I don't feel like there has to be specific rules.
So kind of like the idea, it wouldn't be modest for, let's say, a guy that works in a mechanic shop. He comes in with his overalls on and his dirty, grimy hands to a wedding. That's not modest.
Yeah, people would definitely be looking at you.
Right.
Right.
Because it's not appropriate attire for the right situation.
Right. I think if you fit in, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like if you're not drawing attention to yourself because you're trying, I think you're fine. I think it's very simplistic, but I think we
Overthink it?
Yes.
Exactly. Because I think, and bottom line, we're not really like supposed to be judging everybody else all the time about simple things like clothing. I don't know. That just seems like it can get very petty.
Oh, yeah.
And so
It does get very petty because then you're like, oh, look at what she's wearing.
But it makes great television.
no, but it really distracts completely from the message of God, which is that you can't earn his love, but anything you do isn't going to make you go to heaven. You know, it's accepting Jesus. So, you know, pointing fingers or saying, look at me because of this or that is distracting from that message overall.
Plus all of the extra rules that you have to keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's distracting
You're
from the
talking
gospel
like
in itself.
No white after Labor Day and stuff like that, or what?
I mean, basically, it's the
Okay.
same principle. But I also decided with my coworker that doesn't count anymore. I am definitely wearing white pants to work this week.
Let's do it tomorrow.
It's happening. Right.
It's just old rule. That's old. That's old.
Yeah.
Now that it's hot in September, it's fine.
You don't think it was hot in September before?
No, not as hot as it is now.
Yeah.
Global warming.
We can talk about that next time.
Join us next time when we talk about after Labor Day modesty clothing.
So, yeah, I think the dangers occur too when we do try to control other people's thoughts and we put all of that responsibility on the women to control the men, because then the men get off really easy and they don't have any responsibilities for themselves. And so that's how sexual abuse occurs and gets swept under the rug because what were you wearing? Like we were talking the other day about Phil and Missy on Hillbilly Broadcast talking about that preacher, that pastor that I don't know if he was a pastor or just a minister, that made his wife and his daughters get dressed from head to toe before they walk out of their bedroom so he didn't lust.
Yep.
That's messed up.
Skirts or dresses to their ankles, pantyhose, long sleeves to their wrists. That way he doesn't have a problem lusting.
You know, here's the thing. He could try. Just don't lust.
Or what are you doing to make you lust?
Right. You're indulging that. Lusting is not... Lusting, let's define what lusting actually is, That's probably a good idea. Because I think it's misconstrued as if you appreciate someone's beauty, you're lusting. But you can look at somebody and say they're an attractive person without actually lusting after them. I feel like you have to purposely let yourself go.
Yeah, and I think you have to look at somebody in a sexual way. If you look at someone and think about sexual acts, then that's definitely crossing a line. And I mean, even doesn't even say that that's cheating, right? The Bible even accuses that as cheating on your spouse when you look at others in a sexual way, or lust after them is longing for sex with them is what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So according to the Bible, lust is a sinful longing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's not just looking at someone and being like, oh, you look really cute.
Right.
At the end. I've had...
Or you're really pretty. Or, wow, she has a great figure. Or she's, you could say that. But I think there's a line, but that you only know. Because really, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to say, hey, I really want to.
I mean, some people do, I guess.
But you might have those thoughts.
Yeah. But, for somebody to say that they are worried about lusting after their daughters because they're coming out of their bedroom and not completely covered from head to toe, that's messed
Criminal.
up. yeah, somebody needs to call CPS on those people. But what a burden he's putting on his poor kids. Like, they can't control you.
Oh.
They're not even worried about making young men in their church lust. They're worried about making their dad lust. That's weird.
That is so weird. Yeah. Which, I mean, that's an extreme example. I have never heard of that. But, like...
Yeah, but I don't think any woman, like, should ever feel anywhere, any church should feel, or daughter, should feel that they, it's their fault. Mm-hmm. If a man steps out of his boundaries and sins because that, or violates them, I don't think that that's something that is a woman's fault unless they were trying in some way to, have that type of connection. But
right. But
just by being, that doesn't sound like,
right. It doesn't matter what you're wearing. That doesn't give anybody an excuse to say anything inappropriate, lust after you, do anything inappropriate ever. Mm-hmm. Ever. That doesn't give you an invitation to do that. And I want to wear things that I feel good in. Like, I don't want to have to worry about that all the time. And, like, Kelly and I were talking earlier, like, I care about what Jeremy thinks. I don't care what anybody else thinks of me. So...
Don't you think it's a huge tool, though, that the devil's using now? Because I think that, that is such a good distraction. And it's one that, showing women in such sexual ways all the time, I think men get very inundated and they're very visual. And so I think they get, not that they're getting trapped or anything, but they are drawn towards that. Like, we're drawn towards attractive things.
Yeah.
And I think that unfortunately it's very, very, very much thrown in our society, in their face and all over the place.
Well, and I think it cheapens them as humans. It does too. Like saying that they can't control it. And like we have some kind of mystical power over them that we can control their thoughts by dressing a certain way. And like, what does that say for the men? They're just like animalistic?
Yeah.
You've been around guys, right?
I have.
And
I have more faith in you guys than thinking that.
I think what Kelly's saying, though, it is, not blaming culture, but the enemy knows what he's doing. And especially you're raising a young man, we're raising 3 young men. It's the pervasiveness in this culture and just even the perverseness of it. It's just celebrated right now. It's not shameful to have a billboard with a woman half dressed in lingerie. That's normal. Like, oh, hey, go buy this down at the mall. And it's, when you look at the definition of pornography, it's pornography. It's any sexual.
And that I think would be a stumbling block.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because that's
it's a
the
sexual
purpose
image.
of it.
Yeah.
If you're just walking around Walmart in shorts and a t-shirt, that's not the same thing. It's not.
And I think that goes back to what you guys were saying earlier. That's the point you made. It's not on women. Oh my gosh, I'm wearing this t-shirt that has maybe it's a lower cut shirt, whatever. It's not up to you guys to not wear that shirt just to make sure that nobody has thoughts towards you or lusts after you. Like that's completely on the other person. It shouldn't be something that you guys worry about leaving your house.
Right. That's not our responsibility.
Getting back to the culture, unfortunately, it's encouraged to wear the shorter shorts. We have friends. I got a good 2 friends that have daughters. 3 friends that have daughters, and they even for years they've talked about just to go shopping for preteen and teenage girls, then find clothes that actually cover them.
That's true.
And so it's not making an excuse. It's just when you look at
it's a norm, more of a norm.
When you look at if you look at what the enemy's doing in our culture, it's normal now
But the thing is, I feel like if you're teaching your men to be respectful,
it shouldn't matter.
Of women, and if you're teaching your girls as growing up to be to respect their bodies is because they're their bodies, and to actually listen to the Spirit and be like, check yourself. Why are you wearing this?
Yeah,
Is it because you
100%.
want to get attention from other people or because you feel good in it?
Yeah,
Totally
because
agree.
there are things that are inappropriate. Like, and you
Right.
should be able to feel that yourself. Like, say,
Right,
I know this
exactly.
isn't right. Yeah.
Totally agree.
Exactly. So
And-
you just check yourself. But I don't feel like, yes, obviously we are living in a fallen, sinful world. So it is what it is. But to impose specific rules, to blanket them for everybody because one particular person in leadership, I'm using that in quotes, has a certain conviction, that's putting responsibility on the women that doesn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And men, like there are churches that have like rules that men, it's like somebody literally just messaged me and said that they were a new convert in Christ. I think he said he had only been going to church for a month or two or something. And his pastor, he showed up to church in basketball shorts because it was like 100 degrees outside. And his pastor made him go home and change. Like that's just messed up.
Right.
There's no reason for that.
That's so, I don't know. It come back to every time. That's so against the way Jesus would be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like Jesus turned away the leopard? Jesus turned away the prostitute? No, Jesus went to them. Like anybody that walks or comes into the church that might not feel comfortable should always feel that welcome love of Jesus, because that's the purpose of being there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, that just makes me cringe, because that's the one place you shouldn't ever feel, who cares what you're wearing? It's so petty and materialistic. Who cares? It's clothing.
Right. It's clothes. It's just clothes.
And
also, like we were talking earlier, like the only people that Jesus rebuked for their clothing was the Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because they were dressing to stand out.
Yeah.
And, like people will say, well, you have to be holy. You have to have holiness. Well, that's not what holiness is. It's not standing out. And the verse that talks about, be ye separate and come out from among them, be ye separate, says the Lord. That's what they always come back to about for clothing choices. But the thing about it is, if you are following Christ, you are going to be different. You're going to be separate because you're going to be more giving. You're going to be more loving. You're going to portray the attributes of Christ. It has absolutely nothing to do with standing out with your clothing choices.
No.
Absolutely nothing. And in fact, I feel like Jesus would rebuke you like he did the Pharisees because they were trying to stand out with their clothing choices.
Because it became a pride issue.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, like sitting on a beach and being like, look how many people are looking at me because of what I have on. Like, it's just messed up. That's not, that defeats the whole purpose of modesty.
Right. If you're using your clothing to portray your Christianity, there's a problem because you're not using the fruits of the Spirit to do so.
That's actually a really good point. Because whenever we left, one of the things that I struggled with was, well, how are people going to know that I'm a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
If they can't see it on the outside. And unfortunately, everything was rotten in my heart because I was prideful and I was arrogant and I judged people. But I thought everyone knew that I was a Christian because of what I had on. But really in reality, I don't even think I was saved until after we left that and I started dressing more normally. Not that that had anything to do with my salvation, but
No.
I stopped worrying about what people saw when they looked at me as far as my clothing, and I started trying to be more like Christ and being loving and accepting and giving and just, showing the fruits of the Spirit. And that's how we're going to come out and be separate.
And that's, and I was telling you before, I think too, with my heart went out to some of those people at the conference, because you could tell stuff like this though is so scary to leave from, because you have the guidelines and the parameters in front of you. Mm-hmm. So you know what you're supposed to do to earn God's love, when really in reality you have to break through that, which I'm sure, I just pray for those people because I'm sure it's so hard to come out of. Mm-hmm. But this knowing that, there's not those parameters, but that you just understanding and now coming out of that and knowing that you can't earn God's love, that Jesus died for you and loves you more than you'll ever comprehend, that is going to bring out a peace that you don't have to even look at what anybody's wearing. Mm-hmm. That judgment will go away. Your feeling of what should I do, won't be hindering your faith anymore, you would hope.
Yeah. I think that's talking about, earlier you said the enemy used as a distraction, but I think he does, because it's a distraction from the actual gospel. Mm-hmm. And anything that we can do to take away from the power of the cross, I think is huge. Like, I think that's a huge tactic of the enemy. Why wouldn't he use something that makes you look more spiritual to your peers?
Mm-hmm.
When all reality, like,
Your
that doesn't
actions. Yeah. And your actions should speak it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was just looking for the verse and I couldn't find it, but isn't there a verse that says where Christ himself said, they'll know that you follow me by your love for one another?
Mhm.
Isn't there?
Jesus said that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I don't know where it is off the top of my head, but yes, it is a verse.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he wasn't saying they'll know you're Christian because you have a cross around your neck or because you wear, a t-shirt with a psalm on it or something like that.
To let you guys know, it's a secret handshake. I don't know if you guys know that or not.
Oh, well, I'm a little offended that you've never clued me in since you're supposed to be like,
I can't do it yet. I haven't been authorized. Yeah.
well, I think that's really all we really need to touch on about this, unless anybody wants to add anything. Very sad that our hour-long episode went by the wayside, but it is what it is.
It's out there with the first tithing episode
Oh
just
my gosh.
bouncing around the internet.
Yeah.
Zeros and ones.
I have no idea where that happened. I think because my computer was trying to do an update, I think, and that's what messed me up.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know. So there's that. But I did want to go over it a little bit because everyone does ask, like, how do you know? How do you know you're being modest? And I will bring up, too, because we didn't really touch on it, is one thing is jewelry. Because, like, the UPC and Holiness churches will take those verses to say that you can't wear jewelry. But I will never forget where I was talking about, because I got my nose pierced when my friend turned 40. And someone that we used to go to church with, not UPC, well, she used to be UPC too, but anyways, that we all went to church with at some point. I was talking to her like randomly one day, and she's like, oh, I got my nose pierced too. She's like, I got it pierced though because in the Bible, and I forgot what Bible story she was talking about, but it was in the Old Testament, and it was God talking about Israel, I think, in one of those books, and how Israel or whoever it was they were talking about got their nose pierced, and it was so beautiful.
Proverbs.
Was it Proverbs?
I think so.
Somewhere. I don't know. And she's like, so I got my nose pierced because obviously God thinks it's beautiful. And I'm like, that's a very valid point. That's a very valid point, because I was kind of concerned about that, like kind of going over the top a little bit when I got my nose pierced. But she said that and it made me feel a lot better about it, because I was like, oh, okay.
Well, you still felt like it could be bad that you
did
did that?
I don't know. Like, Jeremy wanted me to do it for like years, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about it. And then my friend was turning 40, and it was like midlife crisis kind of situation. So we went and got our noses pierced, and I love it.
And then did you feel guilty when you first?
No, I didn't. But I thought I might. But then she said that to me, and I was like, oh, you're totally right. Mm-hmm. I think because jewelry is mentioned in the Bible in a lot more positive lights than it is negative, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's in those verses that we're talking about too, in Timothy and Peter, but it gets misconstrued. So you have your phone out.
Yeah.
Why?
I was gonna quote Miss Rhode Island, since we're talking about clothing. She said, once I stole a pair of red underwear from the department store. My mom wouldn't buy them for me. She said they were Satan's panties.
That's
but I heard you can order red pantaloons from Susan.
That's from Miss Congeniality, by the way. I knew that one. I knew that movie. All right. Well, I'm kind of sorry that we asked these guys to come down and help us finish this episode. But but it made it easier because I was so frustrated that we lost ours. So, okay. If anybody has any questions, you can PM me and shoot me questions, because this is something that I do get a lot of questions about. Not that I can actually give you answers that you need to do, but I can give you my experience. So maybe that'll be helpful. All right. See ya.